Out here, a twisted ankle could end a career. A fever could end a life. A fall from a horse could end everything. No hospitals, no ambulances, no doctors for hundreds of miles. Just dust, distance, and determination. If you got sick, you kept riding. If you got hurt, you tied it up. And if you were dying, well, you tried not to let anyone see it. Because the cattle still had to move, and the trail didn't wait. Some men survived things they never should have. Some didn't. And every cowboy knew when he saddled up, he was riding without a safety net. Howdy, Chip Schweiger here. Welcome to another edition of Way Out West, the podcast that takes you on a journey through the stories of the American West, brings you the very best cowboy wisdom, and celebrates the legacy of the American cowboy. Injury and death with no hospitals, no ambulances, no doctors. Just grit, improvisation, and sometimes miracles. Today on the show, we're riding into one of the hardest truths of trail life, how cowboys handled sickness. We're going to follow one cattle drive north out of Texas, watch what happens when a man gets sick, when another gets hurt, and when the trail takes someone for good. Because every mile west came at a human cost. After the episode, check out the show notes at wayoutwestpod.com/sickness. Welcome back. Picture a cattle drive in the late 1860s, northbound, out of Texas, toward railhead country. A few thousand head of longhorns, a dozen cowboys, and one trail boss who's been up this way before. They've been on the trail for weeks already. Boot leather is soft, horses are ribby, tempers are short. Every man smells like smoke, sweat, and cattle. They sleep on the ground, they eat beans and bacon, and they drink whatever water they can find. And already, the cracks are showing. One young hand has a cough he can't shake. Another walks stiff from a fall crossing a creek. The cook's hands are blistered and infected. Nobody talks about it because talking about it doesn't help. Out here, the trail doesn't care how you feel. Sickness on the trail rarely arrived with drama. It crept in. A fever that wouldn't break, a stomach that wouldn't settle, a cough that kept a man awake at night. Dirty water was everywhere. Creeks fouled by cattle upstream. Rivers churned into brown soup. Water scooped from holes dug in dry creek beds. There was no way to boil enough of it out. No way to filter it. No way to make it safe. But men drank it anyway. They had to. Dysentery was common, so was typhoid, and so was cholera. A man would start riding slower, answer questions shorter, miss a joke around the fire. Somebody would notice, but nobody would say anything, because once sickness was named, it became real, and real things scared men. The young cowboy with the cough keeps riding. He's 20, maybe 21, still lean, still proud. He doesn't want to be the reason the drive slows. At night, he wraps himself tighter in his bedroll, turns his face away when he coughs, spits blood once and wipes it away. The trail boss notices. So does the cook. But no one pulls him aside. Because what would they say? Stop riding? There's nowhere to stop. They gave him extra coffee in the morning, an extra ladle of beans at night, and that's the medicine. Ride, eat, sleep, and hope. Injury on the trail didn't creep in. It struck. One bad step, one spook steer, one horse that lost its footing. The accident happens crossing a river. The current's stronger than it looks. A horse stumbles, a man goes down, a leg gets pinned. By the time they pull him free, the damage is already done. The leg's twisted, swelling fast, pain written all over his face. There's no diagnosis, no x-ray, just instinct. They straighten it as best as they can, bind it with strips torn from a shirt, splint it with fence rails scavenged miles later. The man bites down on leather and doesn't scream, because screaming doesn't fix broken bones. Now the crew improvises. Whiskey for pain, whiskey to clean the wound, whiskey to make the night pass. The cook packs tobacco into a cut to slow bleeding. Grease from bacon goes on burns. Hot stones wrapped in cloth ease aching joints. A sewing needle heated over the fire becomes a suture. Bandanas become bandages. Belts become tourniquets. It's crude, it's risky, and it's all they have. Sometimes it works, sometimes infection sets in anyway. The trail boss watches closely because if a man can't ride, the drive changes. The injured cowboy can't mount his horse. They rig a place for him in the chuck wagon. Every mile hurts. Every jolt sends pain through his body. The coughing cowboy grows weaker. He still rides, but barely. The trail boss does the math. Distance to the next town, condition of the herd, weather coming in, leaving a man behind is unthinkable. Dragging the whole crew down could be worse. These were the decisions that broke men. Not gunfights, not storms, choices with no good answers. It happens at night, quietly. The coughing stops. Someone notices the silence. They check on him by firelight. He's gone. No drama, no last words, just stillness. The drive stops in the morning. A grave is dug on a rise overlooking the trail. They wrap him in his bedroll. Someone says a few words. Someone else removes his hat. A marker is made from what they have. Then the cattle start to move, and the men follow, because the trail doesn't wait. The injured cowboy survives, barely. They leave him at the next settlement, no hospital, just a room, and rest. Maybe he heals, maybe he limps forever, maybe he never rides again. The drive still continues north. One man fewer, everyone quieter, death did that. It reminded them how thin the line was, how temporary everything was. So why did they keep going? Because a cowboy's word mattered. You signed on, you finished. Because pay waited at the end of the drive. Because reputation mattered more than comfort. And because walking away meant no future work. But also because they believed in responsibility, in loyalty, in seeing things through. Even when it hurt. Even when it scared them. Even when it cost them. And still, some lived. Men survived gunshots, broken backs, high fevers, infections that should have killed them, and they still rode again. They worked again, and they lived long enough to tell the stories. These stories became legend, but they started with pain, with fear, with men who refused to quit. Today, we live in a world of safety nets. Doctors on call, ambulances minutes away, medicine for almost everything. And that's a blessing. But it's worth remembering what it took to build the West. People who showed up sick, worked hurt, and faced death without turning away. Not because they were fearless, but because they were committed. All right, before we close out this week, we've got one more thing. Yep, that distinctive call from Buster the Bull means it's time for our Cowboy Glossary term of the week. And this week's term is sick in the saddle. And it meant exactly the way it sounds. A cowboy who was clearly ill, but still riding, still working, still doing his job. You didn't brag about it, you didn't complain, you just stayed mounted. Because once you got down, you might not get back up. Because the West wasn't built by comfort, it was built by people who kept going. When things were hard, when things were painful, when things were uncertain. Well, that's about all for this episode of Way Out West. I appreciate you spending part of your day with me and hope you enjoyed getting back onto the trail where every cowboy belongs. If you've enjoyed this show, please consider sharing it with a friend who loves a good Western tale. That helps us reach more fans of the American West. And don't forget to drop us a review on your favorite podcast app and connect with us on Instagram and Facebook. Next time on Way Out West, we're shifting gears from sickness and survival to skill and style, to the tools that made a working cowboy possible, and to one remarkable woman who mastered them better than most men ever did. She rode hard, roped clean, handled horses with quiet authority, and earned her place in a world that didn't make room easily. From saddles and ropes to grit and grace, we're telling the story of a cowgirl who proved the West was never just built by men. That's next time, right here, Way Out West. Until next week, this is Chip Schweiger reminding you to take care of your people, honor your word, and keep riding. We'll see you down the road.